Attorney Barbara Arnwine,
Yes.
former Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, what among the flurry, the 40 executive orders and memorandos and actions that 45 signed when he came into office during his first 100 days, which one could you single out as perhaps to have the most egregious impact on African Americans?
Ironically, our focus is on the executive orders, but what's really going on with this administration is the stripping and destruction of all the guidances and regulations in the federal agencies.
That's right.
That's what people are missing. Because clearly the Muslim ban is ridiculously awful, and it affects African nations very heavily, and people are missing that. And this whole anti-Muslim crusade and how it affects African Americans and Africans is being missed, very much. Nevertheless, what's going on right now as we talk is the literal destruction of every civil rights component of every federal agency in this country. And we're missing it. We all, because that's what they're doing. When you look at Candace Jackson being proposed as the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Education for Civil Rights, that is an anti-civil rights move. This woman has spent her career talking about reverse discrimination, filing cases, against all kinds of laws and practices and alleging that they were reverse discrimination. Also, she was the woman who represented many of the women who we saw at that debate who were talking about what Bill Clinton did to them. She is a partisan of the worst degree, and the entire agenda of the Department of Education right now is stripping away all the data sets, all the school discipline guidances, everything that was trying to make sure that African American students were going to get some kind of education. What she's instead promoting is nothing but privatization. That is happening at HUD, is happening everywhere. And we are, we need to be there. Yesterday, I was really shocked. I was on the Hill, because, I feel it's imperative to walk the Hill all the time as much as you can.
Yep.
And I went into the House Judiciary Committee was having a meeting, and on their agenda was all of these horrible bills regarding policing to make it, for example, that probation officers can arrest third parties who they feel are, quote, interfering with their duties. So if they go to a home and a mother says, well, why are you here? This is horrible, they can arrest her. And that bill was on there. In addition, was a bill heightening the sentencing requirements for people who are engaged in any kind of, quote, harm, misconduct towards police officers. There were at least 2 others. And that room was empty. I looked around and there was nobody sitting in there. Nobody from our civil rights groups, nobody from the Black Lives Matters. Where were we? We have to really understand that this time that we're in requires new infrastructural development for ourselves, that we have to put out, into this atmosphere, not only thoughts, not only spirits, not only the, requirements of, fighting for justice, but we have to be present in a different way. And it is, to me, imperative, absolutely fundamental, that we really look at that. So, so to your question, I think that there's so much going on. The other thing I just want to really hit on really quickly, and then I'll stop, is what's going on with the judiciary. All these comments about the Ninth Circuit today, about stacking the Ninth Circuit, all this, have you been following Sessions, what Attorney General Sessions is saying? My newsletter the transformer that we put out every week. We have a tracking sessions column that we do all the time, and the brilliant millennial Caitlin Cobb, who is the author and the editor of that newsletter, is right here. And we make sure that people see what he's saying because he's announcing their policies. And they're going after the federal judiciary. They're going to use an ideological litmus test. They're quite open about it. They're going to, be looking at dismantling through the judiciary a whole lot of important constitutional protections. And we can never forget about voting rights. That's right. He wanted to do an executive order, you might recall, on voting rights. He wanted to. And he got called out by his own folks and by others who weren't down with this 3 million alleged, unlawful voters. But you know what the story is that nobody talks about because he has dominated the conversation? Do we realize that there were in 2016 2 million less black votes counted than in 2012? The projection from every political scientist was that in 2016, all things being equal, African-American vote count would have increased by 6%. It decreased by 11% during 2016. This is the effect of voter suppression. When you're looking at that 2 million votes and you're looking at how close this was, a 60,000 vote difference that put this man in office, this is what we need to be working on. So these are the imperatives of our times. This is beyond resistance. This is, the movement that we have to be part of, and I am just so grateful. Ron Daniels, IVW, to Sirius and to WPFW for this forum, because we got to bring the word to our people. We got to bring the word to this nation in a way that nobody's bringing it. And it's important to give voice to it because our voices are blocked constantly. And I'm so glad that Simone and others are, out there doing the fight. So thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
I just like to note to that point, while we're talking about voting rights, in 2017, there are 10 states right now who have proposed restrictive...
30. No, it's 30, my dear.
Oh, there are 30 states. There's 10 people that I work with that track,
but
there are 30 states that have proposed new restrictive voting measures. Everything from your address has to be the same as on your ID. Your name has to be the same as your Social Security card, to things like if you're a student, you shouldn't be allowed to vote in this election. So to that point, there are so many things we have to be vigilant about, but I think people have to take their own piece of the pie. And if voting rights is what you do, we have to sharpen up our skills. There's not even a national database that tells us all of the restrictive voting measures and laws on the books. So how can we effectively combat these things when we don't even know what's out there?
And I want everyone to know that the Transformative Justice Coalition coordinates what's called the Voting Rights Alliance. And we welcome organizations to join it. We have, about 30 plus organizations that are members. We also have individual members. And we are putting up in the next 2 weeks an analysis of the 2017 Dirty 30 is what I call them. The Dirty 30 states that are proposing these evil, wicked. Whoa.
Can we get her a church?
Right.
I told y'all. Did I say that?
Nefarious bills.
And I know you want to move on, but they have literally passed these bills right now.
They passed.
Like in Iowa, they passed a voter ID bill. In New Hampshire, they're passing something that is going to the state senate next week. In Georgia, they have literally passed a bill that's about to go to the governor's desk that disenfranchises not only young people, people of color, indigenous communities.
And that is
and nobody's talking about it.
And that is half the story, because it's also in other states. So what I want people to do is, be sure to look out for this new memo that we're about to put out that's going to lay it out. But more importantly, it's not about the write-up and the education. It's about the mobilization, right?
Absolutely.
So we intend to be on the ground. We're going to be in Georgia on May 23rd, all day, Georgia, May 23rd, and we're going to do a Facebook Live event from there. 50 organizations coming together. We're going to walk the streets. We're going to do what we got to do because there is work to be done in Georgia. There's litigation, all kind of voter suppression, and we're going to many other states to start making sure we build the ground movement, that we consolidate the movements, we join and help and support the movements that are on the ground to fight voter suppression.
Attorney Barbara Arnwine, I'm going to give you my podium. I'm going to sit over there in that seat. But you mentioned police accountability.
Yes.
And during his initial days in office, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has pretty much decided that police across America are under attack and need legislative protection. This in contrast with the almost weekly videos that we all see where white police officers are stomping, kicking, shooting, killing unarmed black men and women. I guess, somehow we got it twisted. It's the police that need protection. And it's really, according to Attorney General Sessions, the fact that he has issued directives to roll back any police reform measures put in place under the Obama administration in cities like Baltimore and Chicago, where excessive force has been documented. And he has called for close review of reform programs and consent agreements. Yeah. Ron Hampton, a former police officer and executive director of the National Black Police Association, is this welcome news, and what does this signal to police cops across the nation?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Daniels for inviting me and participating and bringing this conversation to light. And I'd also like permission to also call him something other than 45. My daughter, during the election and after the election, during the campaign and after the campaign, asked me questions about why was he orange, Daddy? And I said, well, I don't know, but she called him the orange man, so I'm going to call him the orange man. What we're seeing is...
Well, I used to call him the orange orangutan until my staff told me I had to stop.
This is escalating.
Orangutans are very nice animals.
And I'm not sure how Syracuse would feel about you calling him an orange man, but...
So what we're seeing is the creation of a narrative to justify a police state in this country. What we're seeing is the narrative being developed to justify a police state in this country and to give police all the authority that they need to do any and everything they want to do in our community. What we have maybe in our favor is a few progressive, and when I say a few, I really mean a few. There are over 18,000 police chiefs in America, and probably the progressives probably make up less than 1% of that 18,000 that we have. But the fact of the matter is that those like Baltimore and Chicago and Ferguson have pushed back on the idea of doing away with the consent decree. A good police chief, a good police leader is working on the notion of public safety, not just in terms of what it is that's taking place, but public safety. And in order to have public safety, you need participation. And so those communities are also pushing back on the idea that justice is going to back out of the consent decrees. What gives justice the authority to do this is in the U.S. Code, and it came with the, I think it was the Omnibus Crime Bill in 92 or 93, one that allowed justice to create this special litigation branch that initiates these investigations in police departments as a result of complaints. So it's crazy that we would allow them to create this narrative to justify the brutality that they want to heap on our communities and the people who live in them. It's absolutely crazy. Even the idea of sanctuary, doing away with sanctuary cities. I mean, people who come here that's undocumented aren't going to engage with the police if they think the police is going to ask them for their records or ask them for their identification. That's not going to work. But there are people out there are entities out there that support this. Right after the election was over with, the Fraternal Order of Police sent the Orange Man a list of things that they wanted him to do in the 100 days.
Who sent that?
The Fraternal Order of Police.
Right.
And I mean, it's things like, you all are familiar with Mr. Obama's, what was it called, 21st Century on Task Force on Policing. They wanted the president to slow down or even eliminate the 54 recommendations that were agreed upon. And look, they were a part of the task force. The Fraternal Order of Police, the National Sheriff's Association, and other law enforcement were a part of the task force. but they wanted to either slow down or not implement them at all. And they wanted him to do away with sanctuary cities, take the money back from them. This is a police union. Police unions don't, the police don't work for the police union, they work for the citizens and the residents of cities and neighborhoods. Right. So how can they suggest the kind of things that they have suggested here? Do some homework, read about, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable, but this is what they're doing. And if you let them get away with the idea that crime is up when it's been going down consistently, violent crime, because we only track about the real 5, although we look at some of the other stuff, but the fact of the matter is our neighborhoods now and have been are pretty safe. And it's going to take even more participation on our part to make them even safer. We can't be going and staying in the house. Come on now, we need to be fighting the police. And I don't mean literally, I'm talking about in terms of participating in the creation, development of policies and practices as it relates and manifests itself in our communities. Well, there's no way we ought to allow that to happen. But if we allow them to set the narrative to justify this, Sessions is almost like the Ku Klux Klan in the Justice Department. That's really what he is. Almost. It's the Klan, yeah. It's the Klan at the Justice Department. He up there in New York talking about gangs.
But
and what he's going to, you're right. About what he's going to do. And I mean, that's crazy that we would even tolerate the lies and the made-up stories about what it is that's going on. But see, if you allow that to happen, then when the sweeps come through, we'll be standing back talking about it. Somehow or another, because we want to protect our community. The fact of the matter is they've been invading our community and beating us to death for an awful long time. We've been on this struggle for over 40 years.
That's right. That's right.
And the newest part of it is somebody like Black Lives Matter. They've been doing some good work.
Yeah.
May I just jump in here on the police?
We got a whole criminal justice side. I want to get to that. I was coming to you two next. Let me get Jamira first. Jamira Burl and then Elsie Scott. Jamira, please.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Ron. He already knows this. He does some amazing work. But what I will say is that I think the dissent degrees were a step in the right direction. But I think what many people forget is that there is more than 16,000 police forces around the country. 16,000. And there are no national standards on the use of force for police officers. So when we say sanction police killings, we mean that there are actually laws on the books that allow police officers to not only do what they do, but get away with it. So there are laws that say police officers can shoot someone in the back as they're running away. There are laws that say that they can deprive them of their basic human rights when they are incarcerated. So while these agreements are great for the cities that they did in partnership with, we also have to hold the federal government accountable to actually putting laws on the books that shows that police should not use excessive force when they're not in imminent danger.
Elsie Scott, Ron Walters Institute.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on this, but first I want to thank Ron Daniels for again bringing us together.
Yes.
And as I sat down here tonight, I thought about in 2008 when we were in New Orleans, when Ron Walters was still living.
Yeah.
And we were assessing what we need to do with our first black president and realizing that we were not prepared to take the power that we should have been taking.
Right.
But as Ron Hampton was just talking about the FOP and their initiative, I happened to be sitting in a meeting during the transition, and I called it the closest thing I've been to a Klan rally. And the police associations were there, including FOP, and that's where they produced this letter and presented it to Sessions' people. Sessions had not been confirmed at the time, so he couldn't be at the meeting, but he had his people there. But it's not a surprise because when Trump, I was supposed to say his name, when the man who's occupying the White House now was running, he started talking about law and order. And we haven't heard that term back since the Nixon administration. And you look at what happened under the Nixon administration when he came in to try to seize the cities back from where he thought they had been taken over when Lyndon Johnson was president. So when you select somebody who's a Klan sympathizer from Alabama as your attorney general, we got what we expected, or we are getting what we expect out of the Justice Department. And one of the things they're saying now is to return power to the states. And we know why the federal government, why the Justice Department got involved with local policing in the first place, was because at the local level, you had police officers who were beating black people, who were killing black people. I remember my father calling in the Justice Department on our local police department when I was a child in Louisiana because they were beating black people. And so now you want to say we want to return the power to the states and to the local government. What are we saying? We want to turn them loose on black people. And there will be no consent decrees. They want to get rid of consent decrees. An interesting thing, Ron, is that now when you go to meetings, the more liberal people there are the police chiefs.
Yeah, that's right.
They're the ones that's pushing back on the Justice Department. And I never thought I'd see that day.
Right, that's right.
They're the ones saying that, you know, this 21st century policing, we need to try it out. They are saying the consent decree, we need the consent decrees.
But see, what the issue though is that police chiefs know how they get their job.
Right.
Through the mayor, city manager, and it has to be confirmed by city council.
Right.
So they know that all politics are local when it comes to the job of public safety. So they're going to try to stay in touch with and then please and
The FOP
engage
don't hire
with the
them.
community because they know exactly what's happening.
FOP don't hire them. So
No, that's exactly right.
That's what it is.
The interesting thing, just this last point, the interesting thing about police unions is that in almost any big city, the majority of the union members don't live in the city.
Thank you.
So
That's
why
right.
do the mayors kowtow
what
to
I
these people? And so you really need to start looking at that when you start supporting your mayors. Is why should they be allowing the FOP to tell them what to do? Because most of these people live in the suburbs. They don't live in the cities.
Elsa, can we bring it
about
home?
campaign funding?
Can we bring it home? Just bring it home. Look, 85% of the police officers in Washington, D.C. don't live in Washington, D.C. Can I say this again? 85% of the police officers who work in Washington, D.C. don't live in Washington, D.C. The union, which represent police officers in this city, are the Fraternal Order of Police.
FOP.
FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police Officers.
KKK.
So why would our mayor yield to the police union in order to satisfy them? In order to satisfy the police union, that 85% of them couldn't even vote for her. So what's the connection? Other than the fact, and the union doesn't care anything about half the things on this page that affect us in a negative way, the residents of this city and every other city in this country. But yet, we ought to be playing games with them. The fact of the matter is that we ought to boot the union out of the city. And there will be no restructuring if the union has this way. Because they are an obstacle and have been an obstacle to any kind of restructuring in criminal justice and policing in particular.
Okay.
Accountability table now come into play.
If I could just follow up on that point, in some cities, the state legislatures have outlawed city laws that have required
That's right.
police officers to live in their
To live in
cities.
the city.
Yeah.
Detroit is a
Let's go.
prime example.
Right, right.
So it's not only that the people have no vested interest in the city, it's also that a piece of the tax base is going away. So these are people who will be paying taxes in the city, but now they're not living in the city. And here in D.C., I don't know why we do it in D.C., but in some of the other places, it's been the state legislatures. And the state legislatures are notoriously anti-urban, and guess what else? Anti-black people. So this becomes a point of legislative contention that we should deal with.
Well, I think some mayors
You're
are afraid that
listening
what happened to them, what happened to Mayor Dinkins when I worked for Mayor Dinkins in New York. The police union came out and basically had a riot against the mayor. And they came out with a mop top, send the janitor back to the closet.
That's right.
And,
Sure
and they
did.
really said, we're going to stop policing the city
Yes.
until we get Mayor Dinkins back in check. And you see what happened. They came and convinced people to vote him out of office.
This
And
is a
they've done the
very
same
ra-
thing with
this
de
is a-
Blasio,
This
actually.
is a very active discussion. We're going to come back to some of these police issues.